The Arrival and the Warning. The Crethean Empire had ruled the Outer Spiral for 12 centuries. Their dominion stretched across 400 star systems, and their military might was legendary. When Fleet Commander Zarek received orders to secure the small blue world designated as Target 3847, he expected nothing more than a routine subjugation mission. After all, the pre-invasion scans had shown a primitive civilization barely capable of atmospheric flight. Zarek stood on the command deck of the Dominion's Fist, his flagship and the pride of the Crethean Armada. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of all 850 warships under his command. It was the largest invasion force assembled in 3 generations. The High Command had deemed it necessary for a planet with a population of 8 billion potential workers. The Cretheans were not monsters, or so Zarek had been taught. They simply understood the natural order of the universe. Strong species commanded. Weak species served. It had always been this way. The expansion of the Empire brought stability, structure, and purpose to primitive worlds that would otherwise waste centuries fumbling in the darkness of their own ignorance. Zarek's second officer, a young warrior named Threll, approached with a data tablet. "Commander, we have completed our final scans of the target world. Population centers are concentrated on the major landmasses. No orbital defenses detected. No military vessels beyond primitive chemical rockets. Atmospheric fighters are present but pose no threat to our shields." Zarek examined the data with satisfaction. The planet was called Earth by its inhabitants, a species that called themselves humans. They were remarkably fragile creatures, carbon-based and water-dependent, with a lifespan barely exceeding a single century. Their technology was crude, their weapons primitive, and their political systems fractured into competing nation-states that constantly warred among themselves. "They fight each other over invisible lines drawn on maps," Zarek observed with amusement. "They have not yet learned that such divisions are meaningless. We will teach them unity through service to the Empire." The fleet had been traveling for 6 standard months to reach this distant system. Earth's sun was an unremarkable yellow star on the edge of explored space, far from any strategic interest. The only reason the Empire had bothered with it at all was the astronomical survey that revealed its massive population. 8 billion workers would fuel the Empire's expansion for decades. "Begin standard approach vector," Zarek commanded. "All ships maintain formation. Weapons charged but hold fire unless provoked. We will give them the opportunity to surrender peacefully." The Armada moved as one, a perfect demonstration of Crethean discipline and military precision. 850 warships arranged in a 3-dimensional formation that had conquered countless worlds. The Dominion's Fist led the way, its weapon systems capable of reducing entire continents to molten slag. As they crossed the orbit of Earth's moon, Zarek opened a communications channel. "Attention inhabitants of Earth. This is Fleet Commander Zarek of the Crethean Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our domain. You will cease all hostilities among your nations. You will surrender all weapons and military assets. You will prepare your populations for relocation to designated work facilities. Compliance will result in peaceful transition. Resistance will result in planetary bombardment. You have 1 rotation of your planet to respond." The message transmitted across all frequencies, carried by technology that could penetrate any shield or jamming device the humans might possess. Zarek waited for the inevitable response. Sometimes primitive species tried to negotiate. Sometimes they panicked and launched futile attacks. Sometimes they simply went silent as their leaders argued among themselves. What he did not expect was silence. Complete, absolute silence. Hours passed. The fleet continued its approach, moving steadily toward Earth. Zarek's tactical officers reported no military mobilization, no evacuation attempts, no communications traffic indicating panic or preparation. The humans simply continued their normal activities as if 850 warships were not bearing down on their homeworld. "Perhaps they do not believe we are real," Threll suggested. "Their entertainment media is filled with fictional alien invasions. They may think this is some kind of elaborate hoax." Zarek considered this possibility. He had encountered denial before in primitive species. "Send another transmission. This time, demonstrate our weapons capability. Target their moon. A single shot on the far side, nothing that will affect their world but enough to prove our seriousness." The command was given. One of the escort frigates fired a plasma lance at a crater on Earth's moon. The weapon struck with devastating force, vaporizing rock and creating a flash of light visible from the planet's surface. Satellite feeds from Earth showed humans around the world witnessing the display. Still, no response came. Zarek felt the first stirrings of unease. This was unusual behavior. Even the most stubborn species typically reacted to a demonstration of force. "Communications, are you certain our transmissions are being received?" Absolutely certain, Commander. We have detected their reception equipment. They are hearing us. They are simply choosing not to respond. The fleet crossed into lunar orbit, well within striking distance of the planet. Still, Earth remained quiet. No defenses activated. No messages were sent. The planet simply turned beneath them, blue and green and seemingly helpless. That was when the transmission came. It appeared simultaneously on every display throughout the entire Crethean fleet. Not just on communications equipment, but on tactical screens, navigation systems, even personal data devices. The security breach was instantaneous and complete, demonstrating a level of technical sophistication that should have been impossible for this primitive species. A human face appeared on the screens. It belonged to a woman with dark eyes and gray-streaked hair pulled back in a military style. She wore a uniform that was simple and unadorned, bearing no insignia of rank or nation. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear, translated perfectly into Crethean through technology that bypassed their own systems entirely. Commander Zarek of the Crethean Empire. My name is Elena Vasquez. I am the Supreme Commander of Earth's Unified Defense Forces. I am sending you this message to provide information that your intelligence gathering appears to have missed. Zarek stared at the screen, his unease growing into something closer to alarm. How had they penetrated his systems? How did they know his name? Vasquez continued, her expression neutral but her eyes holding depths of knowledge that seemed impossible for someone from such a primitive world. 150 years ago, a human exploration vessel discovered evidence of the Crethean Empire's expansion methods. We learned about the work camps, the forced relocations, the species that have been enslaved under the pretense of integration. We learned what awaited any world that caught your attention. The display split, showing images that made Zarek's breathing stop. Detailed recordings of Crethean work facilities. Classified documents outlining Empire expansion doctrine. Communications intercepts that should have been impossible for any species to decode. The humans had been watching the Crethean Empire for a century and a half. When we discovered what you were, Vasquez said, humanity faced a choice. We could reveal ourselves and plead for mercy from an empire that had shown none to hundreds of other species. Or we could prepare. We chose to prepare. The images changed, showing something that made Zarek's blood run cold. Hidden beneath Earth's oceans, buried inside asteroids, concealed within the planet's own magnetic field were weapons platforms. Thousands of them. They had been invisible to every scan the Cretheans had performed, masked by technology that made them appear as nothing more than natural phenomena. For 150 years, Vasquez continued, every resource, every brilliant mind, every ounce of human ingenuity has been devoted to a single goal. Making Earth unconquerable. We united our nations. We ended our wars. We built defenses that would make any invasion cost more than any empire would be willing to pay. Zarek finally found his voice. You are bluffing. Primitive technology cannot hide from Crethean sensors. What we see are fabrications, computer-generated deceptions meant to avoid the inevitable. For the first time, something like sadness crossed Vasquez's face. I wish that were true, Commander. I truly do. Because what happens next is something we never wanted. But you have left us no choice. The display changed again, showing a tactical readout of the Crethean fleet. Every ship was marked, identified, and targeted. The information was so precise that it included shield frequencies, weapon capacities, even the names of individual crew members. The humans had not just detected the fleet. They knew everything about it. Commander Zarek, Vasquez said quietly, you have entered Earth's defensive perimeter. Our weapons are locked. Our systems are active. You are completely within our kill zone. Every ship in your fleet can be destroyed before your commanders can give the order to retreat. Zarek looked at his tactical displays. His officers were frantically scanning for the hidden weapons, but their sensors showed nothing. The planet below looked as helpless as it had when they arrived. This is your final warning, Vasquez said, and her voice carried a weight that sent chills through every Crethean who heard it. Leave this system now. Return to your empire. Tell them that Earth is not a world to be conquered. Tell them that humanity asks only to be left in peace. But tell them also that if forced to defend ourselves, we will do so with every weapon we have spent 150 years building. She paused, and when she spoke again, her words would be remembered by every survivor of what came next. You have 60 seconds to begin your retreat. If any ship fires upon Earth, if any ship continues its approach, if any ship takes any action that we interpret as hostile, we will respond. And Commander Zarek, I want you to understand something with absolute clarity. Her eyes locked onto the camera, and through it, seemed to look directly into Zarek's soul. We will not miss. We will not hesitate. And we will not give another warning. 60 seconds, Commander. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. Silence fell across the Dominion's fist. Zarek stared at the empty screen, his mind racing. It could be a bluff. Primitive species often made grand threats when faced with superior force. But the system penetration had been real. The intelligence they had demonstrated was real. And the absolute certainty in Vasquez's voice suggested something that terrified him more than any weapon. She believed every word she had said. "Commander," Threll's voice was uncertain, "your orders." Zarek looked at the blue planet below. 8 billion potential workers. Resources that would enrich the Empire. Glory that would elevate his name in Crethean history. All of it was within his grasp. All he had to do was call their bluff and proceed with the invasion. His hand hovered over the command console. The Empire did not retreat. The Empire did not show weakness. For 12 centuries, they had conquered every world they targeted. To turn back now would be to admit that a primitive species had intimidated the greatest military force in the sector. But something in Vasquez's eyes haunted him. That absolute certainty. That complete lack of fear. She had not been trying to frighten him. She had been trying to save him. Zarek's hand moved away from the attack command and toward the retreat order. Then he stopped. The High Command would never accept a retreat based on threats alone. They would demand proof, or they would send another fleet with another commander. The only way to know the truth was to test it. "All ships," he said slowly, "maintain position. Do not advance. Do not retreat. Weapons remain charged but hold fire." It was not compliance with the human demand, but it was not aggression either. If the humans truly had the weapons they claimed, they would have to reveal them. If they were bluffing, they would have to either attack an unmoving fleet or admit their deception. The seconds ticked by. 55. 50. 45. Zarek watched his tactical displays, searching for any sign of the weapons that supposedly surrounded his fleet. His sensors showed nothing but empty space and the blue planet below. 30 seconds. 25. 20. Perhaps it had been a bluff after all. Perhaps the system penetration had been their only trick, a sophisticated computer attack meant to compensate for their lack of real military power. 15 seconds. 10. Zarek allowed himself a small smile. The humans had tried their best, but in the end, they were still. At 5 seconds, his tactical officer screamed. "Commander! Weapons lock. Multiple contacts. They're everywhere." The holographic display exploded with red markers. Thousands of them, surrounding the fleet in a perfect sphere. The weapons had been there all along, invisible to every scanner, waiting in absolute silence. "All ships evasive maneuvers." Zarek shouted. "Return fire. Full." The timer reached 0, and Earth's 150 years of preparation revealed itself in 11 seconds of overwhelming devastation. The 11 seconds and aftermath. The first weapon to fire was something the Crethean Empire had never encountered in 12 centuries of conquest. It emerged from a platform hidden in the shadow of Earth's moon, and it did not shoot plasma or kinetic rounds or nuclear warheads. It fired a beam of absolute void. The quantum disintegrator struck the warship Eternal Victory at its center mass. The beam did not burn through the hull or overload the shields. It simply erased matter at the quantum level, causing atoms to forget they existed. A sphere of nothingness appeared in the middle of the ship, expanding outward at the speed of thought. Metal, circuitry, and the 4,000 Crethean warriors inside ceased to exist. No explosion. No debris. The ship was simply there one moment and gone the next, leaving behind only empty space. That was second 1. By second 2, 17 more ships had vanished. The weapons platforms revealed themselves like predators dropping camouflage, appearing from behind asteroids, emerging from beneath the surface of Earth's moon, rising from the planet's oceans where they had waited in silence for a century and a half. Each platform carried weapons that rewrote the rules of warfare. Gravity collapse beams struck 3 heavy cruisers simultaneously. The weapons created localized singularities that lasted only microseconds, but that was enough. The cruisers imploded, their entire mass compressed into points smaller than atoms before the singularities evaporated, releasing bursts of radiation that consumed the ships next to them. By second 3, the Crethean fleet tried to return fire. Plasma cannons discharged, railguns launched projectiles at relativistic speeds, and missile batteries released swarms of warheads. The response was massive, coordinated, and completely ineffective. The human defense platforms moved. Not with thrusters or engines that could be tracked, but through a method that defied Crethean understanding. They simply stopped existing in one location and began existing in another, teleporting through space in ways that made targeting impossible. The Crethean weapons struck empty coordinates while the platforms fired from angles that should not have existed. Second 4 brought a new horror. Temporal accelerators activated on 73 platforms simultaneously. The weapons did not destroy ships directly. Instead, they trapped sections of the Crethean fleet in bubbles of accelerated time. Inside those bubbles, seconds became centuries. Warrior-class destroyers aged 1,000 years in heartbeats. Their hulls corroded to dust. Their reactors decayed to cold metal. Their crews became skeletons, then bones, then nothing but molecular residue. When the time bubbles collapsed, the ships simply fell apart, ancient relics crumbling in the vacuum of space. Zarek watched from the Dominion's fist as his armada died. His tactical displays could barely keep up with the destruction. Red markers disappeared faster than his systems could register losses. Ships that had served the Empire for generations were being erased from existence. Warriors who had conquered dozen worlds were dying without ever seeing their enemy. "Shields to maximum," he screamed. "All power to defensive systems." But the human weapons did not care about shields. By second 5, phase disruptors began firing from platforms positioned in Earth's upper atmosphere. The weapons existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously, allowing them to bypass physical barriers entirely. Shots passed through Crethean shields as if they were not there, striking reactor cores with perfect precision. Explosions bloomed throughout the fleet as antimatter containment failed and fusion reactors went critical. A heavy battlecruiser to Zarek's left detonated with such force that its shockwave damaged 3 neighboring vessels. The battlecruiser had been the flagship of Admiral Korath, a warrior who had served the Empire for 6 decades. Zarek had shared a meal with him just days before. Now Korath and his entire crew of 12,000 were atomized particles expanding through space. Second 6. Second 7. The massacre continued with mechanical precision. The human weapons did not fire randomly or waste shots on disabled vessels. Every beam found a target. Every projectile struck true. The defense platforms moved in perfect coordination, their timing so precise that Zarek realized with horror that they were not being operated by individual controllers. They were networked together, thinking as one entity, making decisions faster than any biological mind could process. By second 8, half the Crethean armada had been destroyed. 425 warships gone in the time it took to draw a breath. The survivors broke formation, desperately trying to escape, but there was nowhere to run. The human defense grid formed a perfect sphere around them. Every direction led only to more weapons. Zarek's ship shuddered as a glancing shot from a quantum disintegrator clipped their starboard side. Alarms shrieked throughout the Dominion's fist. His damage control officer reported that they had lost entire sections of the hull. Hundreds of crew members were simply gone, erased at the molecular level. "Retreat!" Zarek shouted, all thought of glory or conquest abandoned. "All ships retreat. Emergency jump to hyperspace." But the humans had anticipated this. By second 9, hyperspace inhibitors activated across the defense grid. The technology created fields of distorted spacetime that made faster-than-light travel impossible. The Crethean ships were trapped in normal space, unable to flee, forced to face the annihilation that surrounded them. A Crethean dreadnought, the Unbreakable Will, made a desperate attempt to ram one of the human platforms. It was a suicide run, a final act of defiance from a crew that knew they were already dead. The massive warship accelerated toward its target at full thrust, its captain broadcasting a final message of loyalty to the Empire. The human platform did not move. Instead, it activated a spatial folding weapon. Space itself bent around the dreadnought, redirecting its momentum in a direction that no longer existed in three-dimensional reality. The ship simply vanished, cast into a dimension that Crethean science could not even theorize about. Whether the crew died instantly or drifted forever in an impossible place, Zarek would never know. Second 10. Only a few dozen ships remained operational. The space around Earth had become a graveyard of debris and fading energy signatures. Zarek looked at his surviving vessels and saw warriors who had been trained never to surrender, never to show fear, now paralyzed with terror at forces they could not comprehend. His communications officer, her voice breaking, reported incoming transmission. "Commander, the humans are hailing us. They are hailing only us." Second 11. The last second of the attack. The human weapons fired one final volley, destroying every remaining Crethean warship except one. The Dominion's fist drifted alone in a debris field that had been an armada. 850 warships reduced to scattered atoms and one battered flagship. Zarek's hands trembled as he accepted the transmission. Elena Vasquez's face appeared on his screen once more. She looked older now, tired, as if the last 11 seconds had aged her years. Behind her, Zarek could see a command center filled with humans working at stations that displayed technology beyond his understanding. "Commander Zarek," she said quietly, "your weapons are offline. Your shields are failing. Your reactor is beginning to overload. You have approximately 3 minutes before your ship suffers catastrophic failure." Zarek said nothing. What could he say? His fleet was destroyed. His warriors were dead. He had failed in ways that 12 centuries of Crethean conquest had never seen. "We are sending boarding craft to evacuate your surviving crew," Vasquez continued. "You will not be harmed. You will not be enslaved. You will not be processed or tortured or experimented upon. You will be given medical treatment, food, water, and shelter. When you have recovered, you will be provided with a functional ship and allowed to return to your empire." Zarek finally found his voice. "Why?" The word came out as a broken whisper. "Why spare us? We came to enslave your world. We would have taken everything from you." For a moment, something like pain crossed Vasquez's face. "Because we are not like you, Commander. We do not wish to become what we have defended against. We built these weapons not because we desire to use them, but because we refuse to be victims. There is a difference between defending yourself and becoming a monster." Small craft began docking with the Dominion's fist. Human soldiers in advanced armor moved through the damaged ship, pulling injured Cretheans from collapsed sections and administering medical aid. They moved with efficiency and compassion, treating the survivors not as enemies but as beings whose lives mattered. Zarek was brought aboard a human medical vessel. His injuries were treated by doctors who spoke to him in perfect Crethean, asking about his pain levels and allergies and ensuring his comfort. It was surreal. He had come to conquer them, and they were saving his life. Hours later, when he had recovered enough to stand, Zarek was brought to a meeting room. Vasquez waited for him there, standing before a large window that showed Earth below. The planet looked peaceful, unchanged by the battle that had just occurred in its orbital space. "Your empire will want answers," Vasquez said without turning around. "They will want to know how a primitive species destroyed their greatest fleet. They will want to know if we can be defeated by a larger force or different tactics." She turned to face him. "I am going to tell you everything, Commander. I am going to explain exactly how we did this. And you are going to return to your empire and deliver our message." Zarek stood silently, waiting. He had no pride left, no dignity to protect. He was simply a survivor trying to understand how his world had turned upside down. 150 years ago, Vasquez began, humanity discovered that we were not alone in the universe. We also discovered that the universe was far crueler than we had imagined. Your empire, and others like it, had turned conquest into an industry. Species were resources to be harvested. Civilizations were obstacles to be removed. She gestured to the planet below. "We could have revealed ourselves and hoped for mercy. But hope is not a strategy. So humanity did something we had never truly done before. We united completely. Every nation, every culture, every human being focused on a single goal. Survival," Zarek said quietly. "More than that," Vasquez corrected. "Survival with our values intact. We refused to become conquerors ourselves. We refused to strike first against species that had not yet threatened us. We built defenses, not an invasion force. We created weapons capable of destroying any enemy, but we kept them hidden, inactive, used only if we had no other choice." She walked closer to Zarek. "For 150 years, we prepared. We built the platforms. We developed the technologies. We created AI systems that could coordinate defensive operations across light seconds of space. And we did something else, Commander. Something your intelligence never detected." "What?" Zarek asked. "We provided sanctuary," Vasquez said simply. "Species fleeing your empire and others like it came to us. Refugees who had lost their homes. Scientists who defected rather than work on weapons of conquest. Families who escaped slavery. We gave them all a home. And in return, they shared their knowledge." The revelation struck Zarek like a physical blow. "The technology you used against us was built by dozens of species working together," Vasquez confirmed. "Quantum physics from the Varani. Temporal mechanics from the Chronicles. Spatial manipulation from the Drell. Humanity provided the engineering and the determination, but the science came from the very species your empire and others thought they had broken." She moved back to the window. "This is why we spared you, Commander. Because among your crew, there may be warriors who are tired of conquest. Scientists who question what they build. Families who wonder if there is a better way. And we want them to know that Earth offers sanctuary to anyone seeking it." Zarek shook his head slowly. "The Empire will never accept this. The High Command will send another fleet. And another. And another. They will pour every ship they have into destroying you." "Perhaps," Vasquez acknowledged. "But word will spread. Other species will hear that Earth cannot be conquered. That humans destroyed 850 warships in 11 seconds. And most importantly, they will learn that we did it not to conquer but to defend. That we gave you warning. That we spared survivors. That we chose mercy when we could have chosen annihilation." She turned back to face him. Your empire rules through fear, Commander. But fear of what happens when you attack us is different from fear of being attacked. One makes species submit. The other makes them question why they should fight for an empire that sends them to die for nothing. Over the following days, Zarek and the surviving crew members were given the freedom of the human facility. They saw the refugees Vasquez had mentioned. Species they had been told were extinct or fully integrated into other empires. They saw children playing together, different forms and features but all laughing in the universal language of youth. They saw cooperation where the empire had only ever built hierarchy. When the time came to leave, Zarek stood before a small, sleek ship that humans had provided. It was not a warship. It was a courier vessel, fast and efficient, designed to carry messages across great distances. Vasquez came to see him off personally. The ship's computer contains full tactical recordings of the battle, she told him. Complete specifications of our defensive capabilities. We want your empire to understand exactly what they faced. You are showing them how to defeat you, Zarek observed. Vasquez smiled sadly. Commander, if your empire can match what we have built in 150 years of total focus and cooperation between multiple species, then they will have evolved into something different than what they are now. The empire that could defeat Earth would no longer be an empire worth defeating. She handed him a small data crystal. This contains the names and locations of every species working with us. Every refugee who found sanctuary here. Every scientist who contributed to our defense. Your High Command will see it as a list of traitors. We see it as a list of hope. Zarek took the crystal with trembling hands. What message do you want me to deliver? Tell them that Earth asks only to be left in peace, Vasquez said. Tell them we have no interest in their territory or their resources. Tell them we will defend ourselves with absolute force if necessary, but we will never fire the first shot. And tell them that any being seeking freedom from oppression will find sanctuary here, under Earth's protection. She stepped back. Go home, Commander Zarek. Tell your empire what you have seen. And know that you always have a choice. If you ever grow tired of serving conquest, Earth will welcome you. The journey back to Crethean space took months. Zarek spent that time reviewing the recordings, examining the data, and trying to process what he had witnessed. By the time he reached the Imperial homeworld, his transformation was complete. He was no longer the confident commander who had led 850 ships to an easy victory. He was a survivor who had seen the future and found it terrifying and hopeful in equal measure. His testimony before the High Command took 3 days. He showed them the recordings. He shared the data. He explained in precise detail how Earth's defenses had destroyed the greatest invasion force the Empire had assembled in generations. The High Command chambers fell into stunned silence when the recordings ended. Finally, the first general, a warrior who had served the Empire for 8 decades, spoke. This changes everything. Yes, Zarek agreed quietly. We cannot allow a single planet to defy us, another commander argued. We must assemble an even larger fleet. 10,000 ships. 20,000. We must crush them completely. But the first general raised a hand for silence. He looked at Zarek with ancient eyes. Tell me, Commander. In your professional assessment, could we defeat them? Zarek thought carefully before answering. Perhaps. If we committed our entire military force. If we sacrificed millions of warriors. If we were willing to accept losses that would cripple the Empire for generations. Perhaps we could destroy Earth's defenses. And then, the first general asked. And then, Zarek said slowly, we would rule over ashes and debris. The species working with them would scatter across the galaxy, sharing their technology with anyone who opposes us. Our remaining enemies would know that we can be hurt. Our own people would question why we sacrificed so much for one planet. And Earth itself would become a symbol of resistance that would inspire uprisings for centuries. The first general nodded slowly. So we have 2 choices. We can destroy ourselves trying to destroy them, or we can accept that the galaxy has changed. The debate that followed lasted for weeks. The Empire had never retreated from a world they had targeted. But the Empire had also never faced weapons that could erase their ships from existence in 11 seconds. In the end, the decision was made. Earth would be classified as forbidden space. No Crethean vessel would enter the system. The official records would state that the planet possessed environmental hazards that made conquest impractical. The truth would be known only to the highest levels of command. But truth has a way of spreading. Survivors talked in quiet voices. Recordings found their way to intelligence officers in other species' governments. Word spread across the galaxy that a small blue world had destroyed a Crethean armada without suffering a single casualty. And slowly, carefully, ships began arriving in Earth's orbit. Not warships but small civilian craft, carrying families, scientists, refugees. beings who had heard the story and dared to hope that sanctuary was real. Elena Vasquez watched from Earth's orbital command station as another refugee vessel requested permission to dock. She approved it with a smile. Humanity had spent 150 years preparing for war. Now they would spend the next century learning to build something better. Earth had issued one last warning, and an alien armada had not survived the next 11 seconds. But more importantly, Earth had proven that strength did not require cruelty, that defense did not mean conquest, and that the most powerful weapon was not the one that destroyed enemies but the one that made them question why they were fighting at all. The stars had watched over Earth for billions of years. Now they watched as the small blue planet became something new. Not an empire. Not a conqueror. But a sanctuary. A hope. A place where beings of 1,000 different forms could stand together and say with absolute certainty, "We are free, and we will defend that freedom with everything we have." That was the message Commander Zarek had carried home. That was the truth that would change the galaxy. And that was why, when historians looked back on this moment centuries later, they would mark it not as the day Earth destroyed an invasion fleet, but as the day the universe learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not its technology. It was its unwillingness to become the very thing it had fought against.